before we get started, I got this new shirt.
Oh, nice.
I'm pretty stoked about it.
Yeah, I still got that sticker from you, man. I still got that sticker.
Oh, yeah. Hello everyone, I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. Today I would like to bring to you an interview I had with Vortex, or at the one Vortex on Twitter. He is a member of the World Cypto Network, regularly putting out content, and I think he's a fantastic content creator, especially when it pertains to current events in the crypto and Bitcoin space. So here is my chat with Vortex, and just a side note, I'm thinking of doing more than one video per week. I've just found that now that I'm starting to do interviews, it's tough to fit in my how-to videos at the same time. So I'm going to try and do my weekly how-to video, and then I'm toying with the idea of doing live interviews whenever there's somebody available for one. So if you like that idea, let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, here is my interview with Vortex. Enjoy. All right. Hello, everybody. I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. I am sitting down with a special guest today, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. I'll throw over. Can you tell the viewers, for people who may not know who you are, can you tell them who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about your journey into the Bitcoin space?
Sure. So, I don't want to get too much into me because really I don't matter too much, right? It's what Bitcoin is what matters. So, I try to help facilitate Bitcoin into the world. That's what I do. So I have a show on the World Cypto Network called the Bitcoin News Show. And I do that show every other week, every other Sunday. And we put that on the World Cypto Network YouTube channel. And I have a lot of fun doing that now. We just celebrated the 1 year last November. So we've been doing that now over a year. And for the past couple of months, a few months now at least, we've been having a special guest on every show. And so I really am focused on trying to bring people in the Bitcoin community on air and try to get their thoughts shared with the rest of the community. So I'm really passionate about that right now with the show, trying to get the message, trying to get people's voices out there about Bitcoin and just try to get the conversation going. So I'm really enjoying that. And then, of course, I have my Twitter account at the one Vortex, where I do a lot of tweeting about Bitcoin. And yes. So that's been pretty far. As far as my journey into Bitcoin, how it started, it's kind of crazy. Like, I think it was a few months before the big Gawker article came out. There was the big Gawker article about Silk Road. There was a smaller article that came out about the Silk Road, and I saw that. And so I checked it out, and I went to the Silk Road. I'm like, what is this darknet thing? What is this? So that was an interesting introduction. I went into that, checking that out, and I saw Silk Road, and I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. Like, I'm not a drug user or anything like that, but I just couldn't believe it. Like, I have to try this out. So I actually tried to order a bag of pot, and I'm like, okay, so I have to get this Bitcoin thing. So I got to go to get this Bitcoin thing. So I went with this Coinapult thing, right? Remember the red phone back in the day? I got some Bitcoin. I ordered something, and sure enough, 2 days later, it was in my mailbox. And I was like, okay, this is something. This is actually real. This exists. And from there, it just went down to the rabbit hole. From there, I went into Bitcoin just kind of completely, and kind of lost myself in it, trying to figure out what it is, what its place is on this planet, and really what it's here to do, so, and how it can help us. And then professionally, I've been a web developer now for over 10 years. So I do a lot of programming, a lot of design. I'm a full stack developer, so I do work on the front end with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and I do work on the back end with things like Node.js and C#. And so I've been a developer for most of my adult life now. So since I was about 18 or 19. And so that's what I do for a living. Awesome.
That's great. So in a roundabout way, you got into Bitcoin through a big bag of pot.
Correct. Absolutely. And it's a lot of people got into Bitcoin that way too, and they won't admit it, but I'll tell you what, like, that's just absolutely what fascinated me. There's just no way that I just thought there was no way that this was going to work. There's no way that that's true. And holy crap, it worked. And so absolutely amazing.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, let's just jump right into it, because there's been a lot of stuff going on. Now, I think a fair number of the people that watch me can be either new to the crypto space or looking for simple explanations of kind of what's going on. And that can be difficult when there's a lot of technical and political things going on behind the scenes. But I'm going to dive into a few of the scaling things that have been going on this past week and a half, some of the new developments. But let's get an overview of what's going on. Would you, with your expertise, be able to maybe outline a couple of the scaling solutions that have been put forth? Let's start with, can you give a brief explanation of what is Segwit?
So first, before we talk about Segwit, I guess I'll just say that there is a number of implementations that have come down. There's been, XT, then there was Classic, and then there was Bitcoin Unlimited. Now there's Bitcoin Unlimited again. But to me, in my mind, all of these are distractions from Segwit. All of these different things, most recently there was extension blocks. I mean, implemented by BCoin. There's just all of these things. Everybody, over and over again, just tries to keep. It's really interesting. Companies and are starting to become more clear now with ASIC Boost, which we'll talk a little bit later about. But it seems to me that right now, all of these people continue to push these implementations to try to thwart Segwit, because Segwit is the only tested scaling solution. Segwit is the solution for scaling Bitcoin. Roger likes to talk a lot about the block size and doing it the way Satoshi recommended, right? Well, Satoshi technically never recommended anything, right? He said that what was possible was an ability to continuously calculate block size larger and larger with an algorithm, right? But that's not scaling Bitcoin. That's just increasing block size. And so, Segwit actually scales Bitcoin. And that's really important to understand the difference. And Segwit is just a myriad of things that you can't even call it one thing, because it does so many things. It fixes malleability issues. It fixes a bunch. To go on further, in Bitcoin, you can actually version different versions of implementations of Bitcoin. It's just so many amazing things. It paves the way for Lightning, which is going to be a big deal, a big way to scale Bitcoin. And so really, but Segwit is the scaling solution put forth by Bitcoin Core, which is a tested, fully working solution available today. And it has been out now for a couple of months at least. It took over a year, to test. I mean, it took over almost a year to build, and then it took a year to test. And they designed it in such a careful way to have as much backwards compatibility as possible. To make sure that this will not break the chain, to make sure we don't need to fork, to make sure we don't need to break consensus. So much thought was put into it to make sure that the consensus isn't broken. And really, it is an elegant, perfect solution. And nothing's perfect, I guess, but it is the best scaling solution that we have today.
Awesome, awesome. And so, what have you seen as well, ignoring the ASIC Boost thing up until this point when that dropped, which we'll discuss in a minute, what have you seen as arguments against Segwit? What has been the opposition to it?
So it's funny. There's been a few things, and they've all been, at this point, completely debunked. One of the things was complexity. And, there's less lines of code in Segwit. It's only a few thousand lines of code. There's less lines of code in Segwit than there is in Bitcoin Unlimited. I mean, Bitcoin Unlimited has 10,000 plus more lines of code than, since it first forked Bitcoin at version 0.12, I think. It has, huge amounts of different code and things like are completely untested. So not only does, the complaint about being Segwit is complex, we have Bitcoin Unlimited here with tens of thousands of additional lines of code that is far more complex and far more untested. They have not had the chance to test their solution out for a year like Segwit has. And so that's one opposition. I mean, another one would be, let's see, that's the main one, but Yeah, that's just the main one. It's like it's too complex, and this is another reason I guess people are complaining is that it's just not a big enough block size increase. But I mean, it allows for up to 3 and 4 megabyte throughput.
Yeah,
Without actually increasing the number, the actual block size number in the code. So again, just so much thought put into this elegant solution to make sure we do not break Bitcoin.
yeah,
We do not want to break Bitcoin.
And I've seen argument that it's not a block size increase, but it's I think what needs to be looked at is why did people want a block size increase? And the answer was to do more transactions every second or every minute or every 10 minutes or every block or whatever. The point was more transactions, and Segwit would allow for more transactions per block. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the main argument is that it's not a block size increase, but that's because of the label in the variable inside the code still says 1, but it's still allowing for more transactions. So it's
Absolutely,
it accomplishes the goal without changing that variable. But it's still, and I think some people don't realize that. Whereas the Bitcoin Unlimited protocol is changing that variable, and
that's correct.
And that's there. And the contention comes that Bitcoin Unlimited, everybody would essentially need to upgrade at the same time to accomplish this, but there's also the worry of it hasn't been tested, and all, like you said, all those lines of code, they haven't had the time to be properly tested and ensure that it wouldn't fork the network.
And not just that, but remember, Bitcoin Core has continued, right? They have continued since version 0.12. They're on now version 14. Version or 0.2 or something like that. So they now have thousands of more lines of code in Unlimited does not have now. So they would have to they would have to catch up. I mean, Core continues to move on. And what's strange to me is that they just keep pushing the same narrative right over and over again, which is really weird when we're trying to talk about code, and they try to bring in something like we're saying this is the most tried and true tested solution, okay? And then they say censorship. And we're like, wait a second. I thought we were talking about programming code here. So it's been a little bit difficult, to have a clear conversation.
Yeah, and it's tough when you can paint the conversation as it's someone over here, this group over here versus this group over there, instead of looking directly at the science of it and what does this accomplish. And that's the tough part about Bitcoin is it's a system designed to be solely dependent on the science of it, but we have politics injected into it, which when you have people that would like to go it one way or another, there's always going to be figureheads on either side, and that's where the problem arises. As soon as there's politics involved, as soon as there's somebody to look to and say that person is saying this or this group is doing this, it's impossible to avoid, and it's unfortunate, but that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, and real quick, just one more point. It's just really fun how, like just yesterday, they issued, Roger issued a PSA on Bitcoin.com, right? They issued a public service announcement on Bitcoin.com about how Bitcoin Core is steering the ship wrong, right? But they get upset when Bitcoin Unlimited posts get removed from our Bitcoin. So, it's kind of strange. Like I tweeted this out. To me, Bitcoin.com saying nothing about Bitcoin Core anywhere on the site, there's no information about it, is no different than our Bitcoin removing some Bitcoin Unlimited posts, right? It's just people trying to do what they think is right, trying to protect Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I really had a problem with that PSA. And the problem with that PSA that I had was not everybody going, in fact, a lot of people going to Bitcoin.com aren't people that know that there's two sides to this debate. They're people that are new users going to Bitcoin.com. And if I had been looking into Bitcoin initially and I said, oh, I'll go to, well, Bitcoin.com. There's probably something like that. If I had gone there on day one and seen this PSA, oh, you know, Bitcoin's in peril from this, I would have turned the other way. I wouldn't have gotten into it. I'm curious how many people looked at that and said, oh, fuck this. I'm not going to get into Bitcoin now. And
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think it's a disservice to the community as a whole, because I know that Roger is very convicted in his views, but I feel like he hurt himself there too, because that's not helping Bitcoin. That's turning away potential users to drive your own narrative. And I understand that he really believes what he believes, and that's fine. But at the cost,
on the flip side of that, on the flip side of that, Beauty on did a poll today on Twitter about how many times have you visited internet.com? Right. and so far, like out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of votes, I think there's almost like 1,000 now or something. It's 99%. Nobody visited internet.com. Me personally, I'm a web developer. I work on the internet for a living. And I've never, ever visited internet.com in my entire 10+ year history of web development. So is
that a site? Is that a real site?
That's a real site. Go to internet.com and it's a site. So, it is kind of funny how that's true, but still, obviously we know that in the beginning, because it's early, everybody's going to Google Bitcoin. And then of course the first link is bitcoin.com. But in time, I believe that bitcoin.com will become as irrelevant as internet.com.
Yeah, that's a fair. I hope that's true. Yeah. Anyways, okay, so let's move on. Let's head to. So we've been alluding to this thing called ASIC Boost. I'll let you maybe sum that up if you could. What happened this week with this thing called ASIC Boost? Where did it come from? What is the bombshell here?
Sure. So I guess the Moab, right, that was dropped was from Gregory Maxwell. He actually posted in the mailing list his concern about this thing called ASIC Boost. So what he actually did is he reverse engineered a miner. Remember, he does this. Greg Maxwell is an amazing person. He simultaneously reverse engineers this Bitcoin miner while trolling people on Reddit, while contributing to Bitcoin Core. So I mean, this is a guy that's on another level. And these are the type of people that work for Bitcoin Core. These are the type of people that contribute to Bitcoin Core.
He can rub his stomach and pat his head and hop on one foot at the same time.
Absolutely amazing. So this guy, he reverse engineered it, and what he came to the realization is that they actually have this thing called ASIC Boost in their chipsets. And what it is, it's essentially an optimization, I guess you could call it. It's a way to cheat, to be able to mine faster than your competition. So it's an ability that allows the miners to mine up to 30% faster than their competition. Now, the community was up in arms on how to define this. Is this good or bad? Trying to bring morality into it. But at the end of the day, we have to think about consensus. And consensus states that the mining field must be even. Everybody has to be able to have equal access to the Bitcoin network, to the Bitcoin mining network. And if you have an ability that allows you to mine 30% faster than the rest of the Bitcoin mining network, then consensus is no longer aligned and something is wrong. And so what that means is that it eventually will correct itself. So there actually has been a BIP that's been issued. Gregory Maxwell actually gave us some idea of what he thinks we should do to fix this. So there's definitely ways to go around it. But the bottom line is that Segwit, for the most part, removes all this ability of ASIC Boost. So if we actually activate Segwit, what happens is that ASIC Boost pretty much goes away. Now, there's a lot of people in the community, and myself included, that think that ASIC Boost has a big deal to do with why the debate has gone on so long. It has a big deal to do with why people have been stalling Segwit, why people, best solution isn't the right best solution. And it kind of baffles my mind. Like, a lot of people were confused. We had no idea what they're talking about, all these different kinds of forks. Like, no, we should hard fork Segwit instead of soft fork it, because hard forking Segwit actually will allow the ASIC Boost to remain. It's the soft fork that kills it. And so everybody was confused. Like, wait a second, we all know that soft fork is backwards compatible and that hard fork is bad. if it's contentious, because it can split the network, but still we want a hard fork. Like, everybody was confused. Why do you guys want this hard fork? And so the whole community was really confused at this point, why these people were holding back this entire scaling debate. And it seems that, from my point of view, it seems that ASIC Boost, they simply just wanted to keep using ASIC Boost and have this 30% advantage. And the big company behind this is Bitmain, and the CEO of that is Jihan Wu. And you know, he continues to very short temper, and so that equates to some pretty crazy memes on Twitter that has been created by him. But at the end of the day, we have to have consensus. We have to have an equal playing field for miners, and ASIC Boost is not going to allow us to do that.
Yeah, and part of the problem, from what I understand, is that Bitmain, it was baked into the chip, but this ASIC Boost, you could do it covertly. And that's the part that Segwit is not compatible with. In fact, if Bitmain were to be using ASIC Boost, essentially ASIC Boost itself wouldn't be a problem if it were just out in the open. Yes, it would give somebody a competitive advantage, but I've heard arguments that, well, that's just competition among miners. The problem is that ASIC, number one, Bitmain is the number one, or are they the only fabricator of these ASIC chips? They're up there. They're the number one.
They're the number one by far. Number one by far. I think the second might be Bitfury, but they're definitely, Bitmain is number one.
Yeah, and so they essentially before didn't tell anybody that this these chips had ASIC Boost capability.
Well, technically, back in 2014, it was already discovered about ASIC Boost, and you know, they were kind of talking about it, but they claimed to have never used it. They claimed to have never turned it on and never used it on the main net, possibly only the test net, right? But there has been all this anomalies that have been detected by people, mainly these empty blocks. Nobody can figure continuing to mine these empty blocks. And Jihan Wu issued a tweet like, well, it's the free market. It allows me to do this. But that doesn't answer our question. Why the hell are you mining empty blocks and then going around with Bitcoin Unlimited claiming that blocks are full? You know, it just made no sense to people. And you know, this ASIC Boost seems to explain a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the competitors that had to buy the ASICs through Bitmain. So if Bitmain is covertly using ASIC Boost, which, I mean, there's anomalies that suggest that's happening. It's not 100% conclusive, but there's a worry that this is happening, which means that Bitmain has a 20 to 30% advantage over all of their competitors that are buying their chips through them. And that is majorly, if they are using it, then it's majorly influencing the future of Bitcoin development, because essentially any sort of a soft fork that alters the block header would be incompatible with ASIC Boost. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow. So, okay. So that's why this is such a contentious issue. Now, Greg Maxwell did put out a snippet of code that is completely separate from Segwit, that would essentially not make ASIC Boost incompatible, but it would do away with covert ASIC Boost. So everybody's claiming they're not using ASIC Boost currently. Every miner has said, yeah, we're not using this. So essentially the only reason to block that BIP or that Bitcoin improvement would be if you are covertly using ASIC Boost. Is that correct?
That seems like, I mean, that's correct, and that's what everybody, a lot of people in the community seem to say. I mean, we have Jihan saying that they never used it. You know, we have Roger saying that it's a non-issue, but yet the technology tells us otherwise, right? The technology is directly refuting these politicians. Okay,
so basically this new BIP put forward. Actually, I don't even know if he's fully coded it yet.
Well, but no, BIP 148 is not fully coded yet. But Gregory actually released some information about it today, saying that he doesn't fully support it because It's not quite as backwards compatible as Segwit. You have to remember again how careful and articulate Segwit to make sure that it was backwards compatible and as secure as possible and doesn't break the network. So though this this BIP is great, like it's really close, it's like 99% there, it's almost there, it still has a little bit of backwards incompatibility, or a little bit less backwards incompatibility than Core is comfortable with.
Yeah.
So Gregory did put forth his comments, and hopefully we can get that fixed and then implemented. And if the case comes down to it, then we will have to use a user activated software. Fair
enough. All right. The last thing I want to touch on with the scaling and the Segwit and all this stuff is F2 Pool and Litecoin and Segwit and all this stuff. So Wang Chun, he's the head of F2 Pool. That's right? Yes. Yeah. So he's been back and forth a lot with these tweets and signaling Segwit on Litecoin. So when he started to when Litecoin started to get more signaling for Segwit, the price went up. And then he stopped signaling Segwit and the price tanked, or he said he was going to stop signaling Segwit and the price tanked. And then he came back and said, oh, no, we do support Segwit on Litecoin. And he started signaling again. Since then, Litecoin has passed the 75% threshold. And if they're able to keep, I think on average, keep that up over a couple weeks, then it will be activated. But so he's, on one hand, he's signaling and saying that he supports it on Litecoin, but then, hours later, he's tweeting that Segwit would be an absolute disaster on Bitcoin. And the second he tweets that, there's a tank in the price. It went from above 1,200, somewhere in 1,230 or something like that, drops to under 1,200. We went down to 1170, 1160, something like that. So, I mean, this guy is back and forth with these tweets, and he's just knocking the price back and forth, everything he says. What do you have a take on this? What do you think he's doing here?
So basically he's, acting as rationally as he thinks is possible, right? So he's not doing anything too crazy, but here's the bottom line. It's early days. So there's going to be able to be people like this that's going to be able to move these little tiny pools of liquidity, a couple hundred million here, and so a couple hundred million market cap of something, can be moved really quickly. Now, Bitcoin itself, there was a few different reasons why the price went down a little bit. We got the short squeeze going on between these $20,000 buy and sell, on Bitfinex. And we got Roger issuing PSAs on Bitcoin.com. We got Wang Chun talking about Segwit. So there's a few different things. And as we've learned from China, there's only so many times the market will move because of these people.
Yes.
They actually get less and less and less influential in these markets. And that's because these are actual free markets. Like this is not controlled by any central party. The crypto world is a thing of its own, right? It's completely autonomous, separate from everything else. And so in these early days, we're going to have people that can move prices of coins like that. Now, like I said, further down the road, eventually China can't even move Bitcoin price anymore. Like they stopped withdrawals, they added withdrawals, they stopped withdrawals, they did all these different things, and now they can't even move the price. So the fact that these people can move the prices of these altcoins, it shouldn't be too surprising because of the small pools of liquidity. But again, that is only a limited time. You only have a limited amount of time of influence that you can have over a free market, and everybody can have some influence, right? But to have a great influence, that's only a small amount of time.
Yeah, and as the market cap goes up, like you're saying, there's more liquidity. People, like you said,
people will start to listen to other people instead.
Yeah. So I think you're right that it's only a matter of time before tweets from this particular person or this group of people have much of an influence anymore, because as with China and other, Russia coming out recently saying that they're going to look at recognizing Bitcoin, whatever that means. It sounds like there's a new issuance from a government every other day saying, oh yeah, we're looking at this.
Quick, Japan just legalized it, right? They just legalized the currency in Japan pretty much they legalized Bitcoin for as a legal tender, and the price didn't do anything. Yep. An entire country legalizing Bitcoin, like just 1 year ago, would have shot that price, doubled it. It would have shot it way up there. But now and today into 2017, as we move further down the space-time continuum, and we see that the market cap grows and the influence lessens, and that's it. That's the free market.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess since we're on the topic of price, everybody has their own estimations of where this thing is going. And a couple of people that have had big voices in the Bitcoin space have been Vinny Lingham and Tone Vays. And Vinny, with this whole scaling debate, has been somewhat, well, pretty bearish. In fact, he said that he sold 90% of his Bitcoin. He's only keeping 10%. And he says he's going to stay that way until something changes, until he sees a path forward for scaling. He says that he doesn't see the price going above 1,300. He thinks that's a major point of resistance until something happens. But then when you look at Tone, who, if any of my viewers who haven't seen Tone Vays, he does some great technical analysis on his channel. I'll link that down below. But he thinks that regardless of scaling, even if we just have status quo, we're going to continue to see big gains in Bitcoin. He thinks that we're in a channel, and that in the coming months, he sees us, it wouldn't be unreasonable if we were to hit 15, 16, 1700. He says if we start going towards 2000 in a month, then that's bubble territory. But he sees this channel, and he sees that we're gonna continue to grow regardless of the ongoing scaling debate. Do you have any opinion on this? Do you lean one way or the other, or what are your thoughts?
Sure. So Bitcoin, if you look at the logarithmic chart from its inception, you'll see that it does follow this channel, and it has gone above it and has gone below it, but it stays in this channel. So Tone, obviously is not the first person, actually is a sub channel of the main channel that Bitcoin has always existed in. And that particular channel that Tone always has is a smaller channel and a more recent channel. Basically, that's post 2013 is the channel that he likes to follow. And that, again, that's a channel that resides within the big channel as a whole. And the entire main channel is still bullish, completely bullish. It has been in the channel the whole time. The most recent channel that Tone talks about, we are still in, which is actually a pretty bullish channel. That particular channel puts it at about $10,000 by 2018, 2019. So it's a particularly bullish channel, but it's completely accurate. If you look at the technical analysis, you can see that is exactly where we're going. It's just like Andreas likes to say, we go like this, up and up and up. We bounce around Bitcoin since its beginning, since its inception. Started out as a penny, went to $1, $10, $100 to 1,000, and this is how networks grow. This is how the internet grew, right? The internet, started out in the 90s. Nobody knew about it. Come 2001, domains are suddenly worth $1 million. Domains is a really good example to compare Bitcoin to, because in the early days there was only a small period where you could buy domains for like 4-letter domains, 4 or 5-letter domains, 3-letter domains for $20, $20 here, $20 there. Before you could buy love.com for $20 in 1995. Okay, like it's or maybe 94, but it moves that fast. Now suddenly, fast forward just a few years, because people have a hard time, humans in general have a hard time understanding, right, just things that just move exponentially. We have a hard time understanding that, but then that's how networks work. And so when we think about and try to extrapolate, contrast, and compare these networks with real world things, like nothing fits. There's just not many things that grow at thousands of percent, tens of thousands of percent. The internet is one of those things. Bitcoin is one of those things. These are network effects, and these network effects are compound on each other and allow this just exponential growth. And so basically, Bitcoin is still there. It's still growing exponentially if you count from its beginning, and it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. And so everybody tries to predict the price, but here's the bottom line. Bitcoin is going to stay. It's not going anywhere. Whether it's $100 tomorrow or $1,000 tomorrow, one Bitcoin will still be worth one Bitcoin, and Bitcoin will still be working. And that's an important thing to understand, because Bitcoin has been working for 8 years perfectly. No downtime. Not one single financial network on this planet can actually say that. Only Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and we're talking about 8 years down the road, executing a worldwide consent that requires a worldwide consensus change of having the Bitcoin supply executed perfectly, instantaneously, globally across the planet. That was programmed 8 years ago. It worked perfectly. There was all of these things about how Bitcoin was supposed to spiral down. Well, there's a million obituaries, of course, but the halving was specifically supposed to spiral it down. Then the miners would not be able to get profits, and Bitcoin would die. And of course, we see that's not the case. So it continues to go up. We got another halving coming in 2020. Adam Demeester, the Bitcoin Meister, right? Adam Meister. He always talks about the 2020 halving as like the glory day is this walk in the light, because that's going to be a really big time for Bitcoin again, because it halves the supply, and so Bitcoin will have to double in price. And so what we're looking at right now, as far as my technical analysis goes, is very much in line with Tone.
Yeah. And
Vinny likes to read the social part, I think, a lot more, and Tone just likes to read the technical analysis. But I like to see it as a whole, and I see the smartest people in the world putting all of their passion voluntarily into this project that has never been before possible in human history. And so I just don't see that going away. We are in the middle of a financial renaissance.
Yeah.
And yeah. So real quick, I'll just real quick give you my prices then. So we're looking at 2,000 for sure by this time next year. I mean, we're definitely going to be at 2,000, whether Segwit passing that between 8 and 10,000 by 2020, and then after the halving, that's anybody's guess. After the halving, going into the halving though, we're looking at between $5,000 and $10,000. Easy. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you have to take into account, in order to maintain miner profitability at the time of the halving, building up to it, you have to have a double roughly in price around that time in order to have the same amount of income that you did before. And that's kind of what we saw leading into the last halving last year, is we had this kind of doubling of the price over the course of a few months. It went up quite a bit. Not much happened afterwards because it was kind of priced in, but then months later, now we're over, we're around 1,200 right now, which
it hit 1,000 again in January. On January 1st, pretty much, or January 2nd, it hit $1,000. And so it doubled from the halving to 600 or whatever it was, right? Stayed there for a while, like you said. And then come January, when nobody was looking, nobody was paying attention, bam, 1,000.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to account that the price has to go up in that sense. But I mean, as we see with stuff like ASIC Boost, miners are always looking for ways to be more competitive. They're adding more hash power, and so they're putting more and more money into it. So the price has to reflect that. The amount of money that they're putting into mining has to be recouped by the price of Bitcoin itself. And I think that's where we're going to see some interesting developments, because if actions of miners drive prices in a way that they don't like, then they may have to adjust their actions. And conversely, if we see their actions reflected in the price. So it's kind of this dichotomy where they influence each other.
Correct. It's people are throwing around all sorts of weird things on Twitter, like the miners are what we have to listen to, the users are what we have to listen to, the exchanges. It's the fact remains that we have Satoshi Nakamoto consensus, and that means that everybody has equal say. That means that the users are important, the miners are important, the exchanges are important, everybody is as important as everybody else, so that everybody can constantly look over everybody else's shoulder to make sure that nobody's acting in a way that would be against the network, against network consensus. And so, we're going to fight. This is going to cause fights, right? We have everybody with fights involved. This is no different than sibling fighting almost. You know, you're going to get some fights. It's guaranteed. And that's perfectly fine. We work through them. And we've learned so much in this debate, though it has been going on a long time. You know, we've all learned a lot. All of us now are actually a lot more understanding of the technicals of Bitcoin than we were 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, like seriously, like regular people who were just, you know, tweeting on the sidelines now have a lot more intricate detail of how Bitcoin works, and because of the scaling debate. And so there's all sorts of net positives and things that can actually come out of it. But you know, in my opinion, this is absolutely beautiful. This is how public real consensus works. This is instead of a dictator authoritarianship. You know, if you really want somebody to make decisions, hey, no problem, centralize that shit, put a president on it, and you will get things done fast and fast.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head by acknowledging as down in the dumps as the whole debate can make people feel. It is a beautiful thing, because if you think of what's before this, you sit back and you call from the Federal Reserve and you say, well, I guess that's what it is. Whereas we actively get to partake in the direction of our money now, which was unthinkable in 2007, 2008. And now look where we are, you know, a few years later. It's definitely a revolution, and it's a fantastic thing to watch. And there's a lot of learning to be done through all of this. But I think it's a hell of an experience, and I think we're all actively being a part of history here, which is fantastic. I love it.
We're just getting started. It's only the beginning, people. Bitcoin is the most undervalued asset on the planet that has ever existed. You know, this is just the beginning. 2020 will still be just the beginning. I mean, maybe in the late 2020s, early 2030s, I'll think, okay, now we're about the mid-range of Bitcoin, you know. But as we know, you know, the mining is set to go for another 100 years. So Bitcoin will be mined long after you and I are dead. Bitcoin will still be going.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna end on I like how we got through the thick of it at the beginning, and now we can end on a lighter note here. So I guess you kind of covered this a little bit, but let's just finish with, so what does Bitcoin mean to you, and why is it so important in the grand scheme of things, and what do you hope to see from Bitcoin in the future?
Sure. So great questions. I guess what Bitcoin means to me really is there's just one underlying message that gets me up in the morning, that, you know, I think about when I go to sleep, and that every time I tweet, every time I start a show, you know, there is only one main intention that everything can be stemmed from, and that is the separation of money and state. That is my main goal. If I can participate in the separation of money and state, then this life will have been worth it. I will have done something net positive for the planet, because as we all know, you know, money has been controlled for thousands of years, and with it, they have done awful and atrocious things. And so when we give the money back to the people, we are pretty much taking fire from the gods. It's not going to be an easy transition. It's going to be very rough. But the end result is going to be a golden age of free economies unlike this planet has ever seen before. And that will create a wealth more evenly distributed than ever before as well. And so the end goal is, of course, to have truly free markets where anybody in the world can actually participate, where anybody can start a business and take orders worldwide instantaneously with the least amount of effort. And so that's kind of what I hope that Bitcoin can allow for, is to be able to give the money back to the people, to truly free economies, to truly free markets. And again, with the very underlying goal of separation of money and state.
That gets me amped up, man. I like that. I like ending on that. Awesome. All right. Well, I do want to say thank you so much for being on. Can you remind people where they can find you and all the things that you're involved in, just so that they can go and Google the hell out of you?
Sure, man. So, so again, I'm a bit pseudonymous, you know, on the interwebs there. I don't put out my full name, but I do go under the handle of Vortex. And you can see all my information and my thoughts and my tweets and my shows and my contributions to Bitcoin all by following me on Twitter, which is @the1vortex. And then again, you know, check out the World Crypto Network YouTube channel. Just, you know, Google World Crypto Network. You'll find it pretty quick. We have so much content on there, years of content, just hours, just you know, literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours, just of all the way for the back since 2013. You know, so if you guys really want to like get some history lessons about what was it like to be in Bitcoin in 2013, go back to World Crypto Network, and you will get that feeling of what it was like. And because crypto changes so fast, you know, it's really fascinating to get that feeling, because you can get that feeling from only 90 days ago. Because Bitcoin moves that fast. That feeling you get from 90 days ago is the feeling most people get for being in something, in a project for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that. So yeah, thank you. Thanks to Vortex so much for being on. To everybody watching, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Drop a tip if you're able to. Share this video to anybody you think may benefit. Vortex, thank you very much.
Had a great time, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, guys, I will see you guys next time on the BTC Sessions. Talk to you later.